Welcome to the video. This video will cover the basic configuration that will be used for the rest of the training course. Groups and objects will be created and structured in such a fashion that the rest of the training course can be completed. Before we start opening Vuex, we should first check the server status. On the Home ribbon, select the Log On option. In the username field, enter the username admin and the password. Click the OK button. Disable the bell sound by right-click on the red box and click Disable Bell. Use groups to organize your database. Each group can contain other database items, including other groups. This allows you to create a multi-level tree structure. In the database pane, the structure of the database is similar to the hierarchical folder structure found in Windows. Right-click System in the database pane. When you do this, a context-sensitive menu opens. Select the Create New option from the menu. ClearSCADA displays a list of objects that you can create in the database. Select Group. This adds a new group to the tree structure. We will name our group Control Academy Training. When new groups are created, they already contain a mimic named Default. This mimic is set as the default mimic for the new group. Now we will create an internal group and name it Reservoir. Adding the channel object, which represents the communication medium between the server and the outstations, or RTU. And name it Channel. Our communication medium will be Modbus TCP/IP. Now we will add the Outstation set, which basically represents the grouping object for all the outstations that will be connected to the same channel. We will rename the Outstation set Outstation. Now we will add the Outstation object, which represents our RTU. We will add a new group and call it Pump 1. In Pump 1 we will have a digital input point to represent the running state. So we will call it Running. Another point will be a digital output to represent the command action from our side, and we'll call it Start. Now we will add an analog input point in the reservoir group to represent the level in our reservoir. Crosses on the object indicate a configuration error related to that object. The crosses are updated as objects are saved or when the error is cleared and you press the F5 function key. Each database object has a large number of properties that define how the object behaves. Each property form consists of a number of tabs. Each tab contains a variety of fields that correspond to the properties of the object. We will start with the channel object. Right-click the channel object in the database pane and select Edit Properties from the menu. By changing the settings in these fields, you can alter the behavior of the object. Most objects have some properties that are common to all types of objects and other properties that are specific to that type of object. For each object we created in the previous section, we need to set the properties to enable RTU communications. On the Channel tab, select the checkbox to put the channel in service. Ensure that time zone is set to Coordinated Universal Time. This is the time used at the outstation for time stamping events, and in some cases, it is also used for time-based control sequences. On the connection, the tab configures the connection type to network and TCP/IP type to TCP. On the Scan Parameters tab, configure the line speed to 10 megabits. ClearSCADA drivers use the line speed value to calculate delays in responses to sent messages. On slower lines such as serial connections, message timeouts are extended to allow for increased transmission times. On the Modbus tab, configure the protocol type to TCP. This defines the Modbus protocol being used with the device. To save the channel form, click the Save button. The configuration error cross in the database pane disappears because there are no configuration errors on this object. To establish communications to the outstation, you must configure both the set and outstation objects. Right-click on the set object and press Edit Properties. Check the In-Service box and select our channel object which we have just configured. Click the Save button. The configuration error cross in the database pane disappears because there are no configuration errors on this object. Next, we will configure the outstation object which represents the RTU. Right-click on the outstation object and press Edit Properties. In the outstation, the tab checks the In-Service box and selects the outstation set we just configured. In the SCADA Pack tab, give the outstation an address for the corresponding SCADA Pack RTU object. We will assume it's 2. In the Network tab, select a single network and give the outstation an IP address. And also set the port to 502, which is the Modbus TCP/IP port number. Press Save and notice the configuration error cross in the database pane disappears. Now close all 3 tabs. The next step is to configure the Modbus points so that ClearSCADA can retrieve data from the RTU points and store it accordingly. The points also allow you to send controls to the corresponding points in the outstation. The running point is a binary/digital input point that reports whether the pump is running or stopped. The level point is an analog input point that reports the level of the water in the reservoir. The start point allows a user to send start and stop commands to the RTU to turn on and off the binary or digital output on the RTU. Configure settings for the running digital input point. Check the In-Service box and select the outstation, which will contain this digital point. In our example is the outstation in the reservoir folder. Give the point the Modbus address stored in the outstation. For example 10001. Change the state description to be state 0 as stopped and stated 1 as running. Change the severity to the event type to event and severity level to low in both of them. Scroll down to the Reach the Trends section and change the update rate to 1 second. If you hover over any parameter with the mouse, a box will appear giving you a quick tip about this parameter. In Historic tab, press the Enable checkbox and enable using raw data in the trend list. Now save the object. You can check the point status by right-click on the object from the database pane and select View Status. You can see here the update counter is 0 because we aren't connecting a real RTU device. Check the in-service box and select the Outstation, which will contain this digital point. Give the point the Modbus address stored in the Outstation. For example 1. Leave the status and scroll to the Trend section, and set the update rate to 1 second. In the Historic tab, check the Enabled box and scroll down to select the Use Raw Data option. In the Control tab, enable Action 1 and 2 and select the Description Stop and Start respectively. Enable Update Point on Successful Action option. Save the object settings and let's finish our first configuration with the level object. Check the in-service box and select the Outstation, which will contain this analog point. Set the point address to 30001. Modify the alarm limits to be 80 for high and 60 for high. 40 for low and finally 20 for low. In the scaling section, select for a 32-bit controller 32767 and 16384 for a 16-bit controller. Change the unit to percentage and modify the format. In the trend, update rate changes it to 1 second. And finally, in the Historic tab, enable the option and check the Use Raw Data option. We recommend you to try the exercise by hand. In the next video, we will start using our first mimic with this configuration. See you next time.